On Saturday, May 16, 2026, President Prabowo Subianto stood at a podium in a rural Indonesian village. That same week, the Indonesian currency, the rupiah, had just collapsed to its lowest level in history, 17,670 to a single US dollar. Worse than during the 1998 Asian financial crisis that brought down dictators and crashed economies across Asia. His response was a single sentence that has now gone viral across the country. Villagers don't use dollars. His message to ordinary Indonesians was simple. The crisis isn't real. You don't trade in dollars, so the falling rupiah doesn't affect you. However, outside the room where he spoke, ordinary Indonesians are in serious trouble. Online lending debt has crossed 100 trillion rupiah. Millions of people are borrowing from one lender just to pay another. Inflation on imported goods is climbing fast. The country's central bank is spending a lot of its foreign reserves to defend a currency the president says doesn't need it. This is Indonesia in 2026. Based on population, it is the fourth largest country in the world. It was once expected to be the future star of Asia. In this video, we'll go over what went wrong and why it matters to the rest of the world. For decades, Indonesia was the country everyone expected would join the world's top economic powers within a generation. It is a country with over 280 million people, rich in natural resources, coal, palm oil, nickel, gold, a young population, a growing middle class, and a strategic location at the crossroads of Asia's most important trade routes. By the 2000s, Indonesia was being called the next Brazil, the next India, the next Asian miracle. Goldman Sachs included it on lists of countries expected to dominate the 21st century economy. The country joined the G20. Foreign investors poured money in. The economy grew at around 5% per year for almost 2 decades, even through global financial crises that wrecked other emerging markets. For most of that period, Indonesia genuinely was a quiet success story. The country graduated millions out of poverty into the middle class. Cities boomed. Infrastructure improved. Tech companies emerged. The currency stayed relatively stable. The story was working. But underneath the success, something dangerous was building. Indonesia's economy was structured in a way that left it deeply vulnerable to 2 things: global energy prices and foreign investor confidence. The country imports roughly 70% of the raw materials its manufacturers use. Nearly all of its essential goods, fuel, medicine, machinery, even some food, are priced in US dollars. The economy was growing, but the growth was thin. It was being driven by consumer spending and government programs rather than by building things Indonesia could sell to the rest of the world. In October 2024, Indonesia elected a new president, Prabowo Subianto, a former general, a former son-in-law of the dictator Suharto, a man who had been banned from entering the United States for years over alleged human rights abuses. Subianto campaigned on ambitious promises: free school lunches for tens of millions of children, massive infrastructure spending, state-led economic transformation, a new generation of nationalist pride. He took office and immediately began spending. The government launched a 200 trillion rupiah injection into the banking sector. A new state investment fund called Danantara was created with sweeping powers and limited oversight. Prabowo's own nephew was appointed to the board of the central bank, a move economists warned would damage the institution's independence. Then, in early 2026, the war in Iran erupted. Oil prices spiked above $120 a barrel. The dollar strengthened against every emerging market currency. Foreign investors began pulling money out of Indonesia. The rupiah started falling, and it didn't stop. In May 2026, the rupiah broke through every level that Indonesia's central bank had been trying to keep it above. It hit 17,670 to the dollar. That's lower than during the 1998 Asian financial crisis, the worst economic disaster in modern Indonesian history. That was the crisis that brought down the Suharto dictatorship and pushed tens of millions of people into poverty. The reason for the currency collapse becomes clear once you see how Indonesia is being squeezed from 3 different directions at the same time. First, the oil shock. Indonesia imports nearly 70% of its raw materials and a huge share of its energy. When oil prices rose to $110 and $120 a barrel during the war in Iran, the country's import bill grew massively. Every imported product became more expensive. Manufacturers faced higher costs. Consumers faced higher prices. The trade deficit widened. Second, the capital flight. International investors started pulling money out of emerging markets early this year. Capital outflows from Indonesia reached $1.6 billion in just the first 3 weeks of January 2026. By April, the country's foreign exchange reserves had fallen for the fourth consecutive month. The central bank, Bank Indonesia, has been spending those reserves to support the rupiah. It buys its own currency in international markets to prop up its value. But the reserves are finite. Every defensive purchase makes the next one harder. Third, the political confidence problem. Foreign investors don't just look at numbers, they look at signals. And the signals coming out of Indonesia in 2026 have been alarming. The president appointing his nephew to the central bank board, the new state fund with limited oversight, the government spending plans without clear new revenue sources, the president publicly dismissing the rupiah's collapse as something that only affects elites. When you combine these three pressures, you get what economists call a perfect storm. And in May 2026, the storm hit. But here's the deeper problem that almost nobody outside Indonesia is talking about. The country has been running on borrowed money for years. Indonesia's central government debt has climbed toward 10 quadrillion rupiah, about $572 billion. Debt servicing alone consumes more than 36% of the state budget. The government has to spend more than a third of every tax dollar just to pay interest and principal on debt it already has. And ordinary Indonesians are running on borrowed money too. This is the part of the story that's getting almost no coverage in international media. Indonesia is in the middle of a household debt crisis so severe that Indonesians have given it a name: the pinjol crisis. Pinjol is short for online lending. Overdue online loan debt has crossed 100 trillion rupiah. Millions of Indonesians are now taking out loans from one online lender just to repay another, watching their total debt grow each month as interest and fees pile up. This is what an economy looks like when it's running on credit at every level. The government is borrowing to fund consumption programs. Companies are borrowing in dollars they can't easily repay. Ordinary people are borrowing online just to buy groceries. As one Indonesian analyst put it bluntly, people are consuming their savings and consuming debt. And when people can no longer meet their daily needs, eventually they consume despair. If you're learning something new, consider subscribing. Most of what we cover here never makes the mainstream news, but it probably should. When a country's currency is collapsing, there are a few standard responses central banks usually take. Raise interest rates aggressively to attract foreign capital back into the country. Sell foreign reserves to buy your own currency. Restrict capital flowing out of the country. Cut government spending to reduce pressure on the budget. Each of these can work in the right situation. But in Indonesia today, every single one of them creates a new problem. Raising interest rates would attract foreign money but devastate Indonesian households. Indonesia's economy depends heavily on domestic consumption. If interest rates climb sharply, the millions of Indonesians already trapped in the pinjol crisis would face higher borrowing costs they cannot afford. Bankruptcies would spread. Consumer spending, the actual engine of Indonesian growth, would collapse. Selling more foreign reserves looks tempting, but the math is brutal. Indonesia's reserves have already fallen from $156 billion to around $146 billion over the past several months. The central bank has been burning through that cash trying to support the rupiah, and the rupiah keeps falling anyway. Continued intervention is now being openly questioned even by Indonesian lawmakers, who recently summoned central bank officials to explain why their strategies aren't working. Capital controls would stop the bleeding, but would also signal full panic to the world. The moment Indonesia announces restrictions on foreign money leaving the country, investor confidence, already fragile, would collapse entirely. Other emerging markets that have tried capital controls during currency crises have often discovered they couldn't reopen them for years afterward. Finally, cutting government spending would address the budget deficit, but it would also reduce the economic stimulus that Prabowo's entire political identity is built around. The free lunch program, the infrastructure projects, the cash for work initiatives. Cutting any of this would be a political disaster the president cannot afford. So Indonesia is doing what countries usually do in this position: slow, mixed measures that don't really solve anything. Modest rate adjustments, modest intervention, modest restrictions on outward remittances. Modest assurances from the president that everything is fine. None of it addresses the underlying problem. And the underlying problem is that Indonesia is running on borrowed time at every level. The government is borrowing. The companies are borrowing. The households are borrowing. The central bank is spending reserves it can't replace. The president is telling people not to worry while economists at major banks publish warnings titled, "Prepare for the worst." If this pattern sounds familiar, it should. We've covered the same playbook on this channel before. Turkey burning through reserves to support the lira, Egypt trapped in a debt servicing cycle, South Korea's households drowning in a housing system that no longer works. The specific mechanism is different in each country. The underlying structure is identical. An economy built on continuous borrowing that finally reaches the point where the borrowing stops working. Indonesia is the world's fourth most populous country. Its economy is the largest in Southeast Asia. If this country slides into a serious currency and debt crisis, the consequences will spread far beyond its borders, through trade relationships, regional banking, and emerging market sentiment globally. But the deeper warning here is about the entire emerging market world. Indonesia has been doing what most middle-income countries have done over the past 2 decades, growing through a combination of foreign capital, commodity exports, and rising household borrowing. That model worked beautifully for a long time. It worked because global interest rates were near zero, central banks were printing money, oil prices were generally low, and foreign investors were desperate for emerging market returns. All of those conditions have reversed at the same time. Global interest rates are higher. The central banks that backstopped the world economy after 2008 are now reducing their balance sheets. Oil prices are elevated, and foreign investors are pulling money back to safer assets in the United States and Europe. Every emerging market that ran the same playbook as Indonesia is now exposed. Turkey, Egypt, South Africa, Argentina, Pakistan, the Philippines, India. The specific vulnerabilities are different in each country, but the broader story is the same. The era that allowed emerging markets to borrow their way to prosperity has ended. Indonesia is the loudest example right now. The rupiah at historic lows, reserves draining, household debt exploding, government in denial. But the same pressures are building in countries all around the world. The next 12 months will reveal which emerging markets can survive the new global environment and which ones cannot. Indonesia isn't collapsing, not yet. The country is the 4th largest in the world by population, with an economy that has weathered crisis after crisis for decades. But the warning signs in 2026 are unmistakable. The currency has hit historic lows. Reserves are bleeding. Households are drowning in debt. And the president is telling everyone things are fine. History suggests that when leaders insist nothing is wrong, the problem is usually worse than anyone has admitted. The villagers Prabowo addressed may not use dollars, but they're still going to pay the price. To see how another Asian economy is unraveling under similar pressures, click on the video on the screen.